G'day, I'm out at Forage Farms and today we're talking egg quality and how eggs fluctuate in a naturally managed system with pastured hens. Stuart, how are you, mate?
Good, Tim. How are you?
Not too bad.
That's good.
Now there's some standards around eggs and people think that egg quality depends on a few different characteristics. Can you explain a little bit about egg quality and how it fluctuates in a naturally managed system?
Yeah, well, that's the challenge. Once you've got birds out in the open and they've got grass and all of these other lovely things to eat, sometimes when you've got lots of long grass, the chickens choose to eat that long grass. That means that they're full of long grass, so they don't get to eat their protein meal, as in their grain mix. So that changes the characteristics of the egg.
What are people typically looking for in an egg?
Yeah, so they're looking for a white that holds together. They're looking for a specific colour yolk, and that's different for everybody. A nice yellow to an orangey, slightly orangey colour is probably an indicator of an egg that's been laid by a chicken running out in the pasture, like our ones are. And yeah, they're expecting the white to be nicely held together. And it's the white that changes. The thing about the yolk is the yolk can be manipulated by a dye that the people who put the feed together can put into the feed. So,
and when you've got chickens running in a system, I suppose, like barn laid or cage laid or free range, the chooks are very much constrained to a smaller area and you can manipulate the feed that's going into them, can't you?
Yeah, you can. It's all consistent. They only get the feed that they're given. So they can colour put a colouring in the feed to get exactly the yolk colour they want, which is the yolk colour they think the consumer wants to see. And so they add that in I think there's 14 different shades of yolk colour you can choose. We don't put that into our feed because we rely on the quality of the grass, the carotene that comes out of the grass to give the colour to the egg.
Now you've got about 9,000 chooks at any particular time. There's about 1,500 here in this pen with us today.
Yes.
What sort of area would you be running these chooks on?
Well, it varies depending on what we're trying to achieve. So these chickens are in a lane, which is about 5 hectares in total, but they don't have access to that whole 5 hectares. We give them access to pretty much all the land in front of them, but we bring a fence up behind because what we're wanting is the plants to get rest from the chickens' activity. If we gave them the option of being over the whole area, some of the chickens, not many, but some of them would spread over that wider area, which means they're constantly regrazing that young grass.
So chickens that are in a natural system have naturally fluctuating eggs depending on the season and the food availability to them. What are some of the fluctuations that people could, like myself with our chooks at home, if we manage them well, hopefully we're managing them well, what are some of the fluctuations that we could expect to see in our eggs?
Yeah, so one of the things you would see is yolk colour. Definitely, if they're not getting a dye in the feed to colour the yolk, then yolk colouring.
So I've been feeling bad about my yolk being a bit pale. Perhaps I shouldn't worry about that so much?
No, so the pale colour just tells you there's no carotene in their diet and there's definitely no dye in their feed. So if for customers at home, if they were to buy our eggs and they see them slightly getting more and more pale, then they know it's dry at the farm, not a lot of green. So you get a slightly more pale yolk. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just as nutrient dense as the one that has the deep colour, except it doesn't have the carotene to give it the colour.
And do you see any fluctuations in the white with seasonal conditions and diet?
Yeah, because the white is protein based. So they need the protein in there to create a nice strong white. And so if you are getting more grass and the chickens are favouring eating more grass, then they have less room to be able to eat the grain, which is where the protein is. So their white tends to get slightly thinner and it might spread out more. That can also indicate an egg not so fresh. So here we have an egg that we just cracked, and what you can see is that you've got the yolk pretty much in the centre. Around that you've got quite a good thick white, but around the outside of that there's a very thin white. And so even though this egg was only laid today, this is indicating the birds and their condition at the time. So these chickens are eating a lot of grass. They also are an older hen, so the older they get, the more watery the white can be. So there's all of these things that change, but there's nothing wrong with it. The whole egg is still beautiful. It's fresh. If you went to poach that, you would poach it, but you would have just a little bit more white scum, I guess you'd see floating at the surface. If you fried it, then you'd have a larger area of white. That's all, but a perfectly good egg. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, that egg's not very fresh because of the white, where it may actually be the conditions on the farm at the time that created that, because the chicken's choosing to diet on salad instead of the cereals.
So if we've got chooks at home and our eggs fluctuate, it's not necessarily a sign of stress, and it's not necessarily a sign of bad management. It could just be the seasonality, and it could be what the chooks are choosing to eat.
Yeah, it's usually two things go wrong with chickens on their lay. It's either feed or water. They're the two main things that change the behaviour of your chicken. Two of those things create stress, and the stress then changes the behaviour of the chicken and its egg and so forth. So get the feed right, get the water right, and the chickens will be happy. As long as they got plenty of space to roam around, it's all good.
Well, thanks very much, mate. You probably put a lot of people's minds at ease about their eggs and fluctuations that they've observed over time.
Good on you. Thanks, Tim.
Guys, if you like this kind of content, don't forget, hit the little subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. There's plenty more on timthompson.ag. We'll see you next week.